Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Revolutionizing Manufacturing, the first of 2025, brought to you by Smart Industry and featuring Industry 4.0 enthusiast Jeff Winter. I'm your co-host, Scott Achelpohl, managing editor of Smart Industry. Happy New Year, Jeff, though it has been well into February, if you can believe it. For this installment, Jeff and I are picking up where we left off in November from our two-part chat. The art of the possible in digital transformation, and now the art of the practical. Jeff introduced these two companion topics during episode 4, so I'm going to turn our chat over to Jeff for introductions. So Jeff, please take it away.
Sure. So this started a few months ago. I did a post on LinkedIn on these very topics because I kept seeing the same thing over and over. Companies limiting their visions and not knowing what they should do, especially to start. So the art of the practical, our topic today, it grounds us in reality, where the art of the possible, which was the topic for episode 4, allowed us to dream a little bit. And the art of the practical acknowledges that while our aspirations should be universal, what we actually achieve and the path to getting to achieving it is highly personalized. And this approach isn't about limiting our ambitions, but rather understanding and embracing our unique corporate landscape, our company size, our industry, our culture, and any specific objectives that we may have. And that's why today we're diving into the art of the practical and digital transformation. We've dreamed big, we've thought about how Industry 4.0 can push boundaries, and we've visualized what excellence looks like, when especially we take advantage of all the disruptive technologies that are out there. But now we're going to talk about the practical terms, how we reach those goals and how we achieve our targets.
Great stuff, Jeff. Last time we talked a lot about goals, having the right ones for your business and being satisfied once they're reached. Question is, which goals? Our goal setting is, as Jeff says, determined by our company's needs and objectives. Much of corporate goal setting is about achieving ROI. Of course, we've all heard about ROI. So maybe I would ask this question to you, Jeff, before we dive into questions that have come in since episode 4 in November. How do we make sure that our dreaming, the art of the possible, meets ROI to conform to the art of the practical?
So great question. And the key to making sure that the art of the possible translates into the art of the practical and ultimately drives real business impact is rethinking how we define success. And I'm going to point out one key thing in your question that I want to focus my entire answer on. ROI, return on investment. So too often, digital transformation initiatives are evaluated through the lens of ROI. But the reality is ROI is better suited for continuous improvement projects, not transformational projects. Because when you're making incremental gains, like optimizing supply chain efficiency or reducing machine downtime, ROI is a great measure because you can compare cost before and then after and determine the percentage improvement and the relative gain is associated with that. But transformation is fundamentally different because it's not about improving the existing system. It's about building something entirely new. New revenue streams, new business models, new market opportunities. The very nature of transformation makes it difficult and sometimes even impossible to measure with traditional ROI formulas. A perfect example of this is actually AWS, Amazon Web Services. So AWS wasn't created because of a clear ROI calculation. In fact, when Amazon first started developing it in the early 2000s, Wall Street analysts and industry insiders were skeptical, even dismissing it as a distraction from the company's core e-commerce business. After all, why would an online retailer get into cloud computing? The decision didn't make sense if you're judging it purely on short-term ROI. But internally, Amazon didn't see itself as just a retailer. It saw itself as a technology company that happened to sell products online. And it recognized that if it needed scalable and on-demand cloud computing to run its own operations, that other companies probably need that too. So AWS officially launched in 2006. And on the first day, it was something like 12,000 developers signed up. A clear signal that there was a massive demand. But still, AWS didn't generate substantial profits right away. It took years of investment, refinement, and customer education before the world truly understood the value of cloud computing. But today, AWS is the largest cloud provider in the world, contributing, more to Amazon's profits than all of its retail operations combined. Now, if Amazon had measured AWS solely on its ROI in the first few years, it might never have been launched, or it would have shut down before it became the giant that it is today. So if not ROI, how could or should companies measure transformation? So here are a few key alternatives. First, I would say is market leadership and competitive positioning. Are you capturing new market share? Are you redefining how your industry operates? AWS didn't measure itself on traditional retail metrics, but on how well it could dominate the cloud computing space. The second is customer impact and adoption. So are customers engaging with, and more importantly, depending on your new offering? Today, companies like Netflix and even the SEC rely on AWS so heavily that they report in financial filings that losing AWS would be a major risk to their business. The third is operational agility and scalability. Can your company move faster, scale easier, and adapt better? That's a big change in what you're looking at and what you can do. And I'd have to say that the fourth is ecosystem growth and new revenue streams. Are new partnerships or business models or revenue opportunities emerging? You have to think, AWS created an entirely new business category that high-tech giants like Microsoft and Google had to catch up to. The bottom line here is that if Amazon had only focused on ROI, AWS might not ever have existed. Transformation isn't about proving short-term financial returns. It's about creating the future for the company. And the companies that recognize this and measure success beyond just ROI are the ones that lead industries rather than follow them.
Insightful stuff, Jeff. Thank you. As you can imagine, we've had a lot of great questions from the comments to our LinkedIn's recently, particularly when you raised the topics of the art of the possible and the art of the practical again just a few days ago. Before we get into these questions, let me remind our audience that you are always invited to ask us stuff to answer here. Questions can be posted to our social channels, Jeff's and mine, or Smart Industries, or sent to Jeff and Scott at smartindustry.com. Kanal Wah asks, should transformation arise from possibility or need? Should the approach be technology adoption focused or problem focused? Take it away, Jeff.
I like this question because it's kind of like asking, should you cook your dinner because you're hungry or because you saw a recipe that looked really amazing? The truth is the best meals and the best transformations come from a mix of both. If transformation is purely need-driven, companies often wait until they're backed into a corner, reacting to competitive pressures and regulatory changes or customer demands that they didn't prepare for. And that's like only going grocery shopping when your fridge is empty. Sure, you'll get food, but you'll probably make rushed choices and you're unlikely to end up with this gourmet, wonderful meal. Now, in business, waiting until change is necessary often means that you're playing catch up rather than leading the industry. Now, the other way to think about it is if your transformation is purely possibility driven, you risk chasing shiny objects, adopting new technology because it looks impressive rather than because it actually is solving a problem. That's like, kind of like seeing this fancy machine out there that you want and then deciding, that's going to help you cook a meal and then deciding you need to cook every meal in this fancy machine that you buy, even if what you really need is just a good frying pan. So what's the right approach? Problem focused, but opportunity aware. So yes, transformation should start by solving real business problems. That's one of the simplest ways to make an impact quickly, but it should be informed on what's possible. Companies need to ask themselves questions like, what are the biggest barriers to growth, the biggest barriers to efficiency or to customer satisfaction? Are there emerging technologies or even business models that could remove those barriers in especially a game-changing way? And are we solving for today's problems or are we positioning ourselves for the future? The answer to these questions will have profound impacts on which transformational initiatives you pick and which goals you pick with them.
Interesting. Thank you, Jeff. Tony Huffman asks us, how will manufacturing, OT, and IT organizations evolve and or become disrupted in the not too distant future with agentic AI and AGI?
So the evolution, I would say, of manufacturing, IT, OT has always been a mix of adaptation and disruption. I mean, from the rise of PLCs to the shift to cloud and edge computing, the future I don't think will be much different. But agentic AI and AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, will accelerate the shift from reactive to autonomous operations in ways that I think we can only predict or guess. I'd have to say in the short term, agentic AI, which is AI that can autonomously make decisions without set boundaries, it's going to drive self-optimizing factories where systems dynamically adjust production schedules, predict failures before they happen, and optimize even energy usage in real time. This means that there'll need to be fewer manual interventions, and it will be kind of a shift from monitoring to decision validation. And kind of a growing demand will put it on AI governance and explainability. Those will be some of the biggest things that you're going to have to deal with, especially when IT and OT blend and merge in that way. But in the long term, which is more now going to focus on the AGI, the artificial general intelligence, we're talking about machines that think, that reason, and adapt like humans. So unlike today's what's usually called narrow AI, which is designed for specific tasks, AGI would possess this ability to generalize knowledge and solve novel problems and even exhibit creativity without human intervention or validation. So for this topic, or Tony's topic specifically, of IT-OT convergence, that will redefine IT-OT entirely. It will completely blur the lines between engineering, between IT, OT, and just all decision making. Because if AGI can not only automate but also innovate, I don't even know what that makes. For example, does it make AI the new plant manager, the new supply chain analyst, or does it just amplify human capabilities in ways that we haven't imagined yet? But more broadly, I would actually even have to say that AGI will honestly redefine everything, just absolutely everything. Sci-fi movies have done a great job of showing the good and the bad associated with this, but when any of them come true, honestly, your guess is as good as mine. The only certain thing is that organizations that embrace this and are very adaptable instead of just focusing on efficiency, they're going to be the ones that figure it out and thrive the best. But AGI is something that is hard to predict the impact it will have on any part of any business anywhere.
Interesting answer, Jeff. Here's an EU-oriented question. Ira Sharp asks us, do you see the European Union in the AI race? Speaking of AI, will the privacy and the nation's cybersecurity considerations have major impact on this for the future? And do you see these privacy and cybersecurity considerations being adopted globally?
So this is an interesting question. I'd have to say, yes, the EU is in the AI race, but it's running a different kind of race. One focused more on regulation, ethics, and I would have to say security rather than raw technological speed and capability. Meanwhile, countries like China and the United States are moving more aggressively ahead in AI development and adoption. We're prioritizing innovation and economic advantage and even military applications over just stricter regulatory control. And this means the EU may fall behind in AI capabilities, but it could lead in shaping global AI governance. And there's a trade-off there between security and speed. But the real question is the risk worth the reward? Countries that push AI development without strong safeguards might gain a short-term edge, but at what cost? Privacy breaches, cybersecurity threats, unintended like consequences of AI decision making that could create major long-term risks. But then on the flip side, countries that prioritize this, safety and ethical AI may struggle to keep up with the technological breakthroughs that drive competitive advantage. And only time will tell which approach wins out, because AI is exciting because of its potential to transform industries, but it's also scary because we don't fully understand its risks. And this is the art of the practical kind of coming into action to pull to our topic here. Every nation, every company must decide how much risk they're willing to accept, or how much they're going to risk to reap the rewards of AI. What is that balance that makes sense for your company?
Okay, Jeff. Grant Ecker is going to pull us back into the art of the practical conversation. He asks, what advice do you have to expand our thinking, to revise our definition of practical, to include imagining MVPs with disruptive approaches that can iterate to deliver on these competitive advantage ideas?
So I'd have to say this is probably a little bit short of an answer, but expanding our definition of practical means reorganizing and sorry, let me start over on that one. I'll give a few seconds. So I'd have to say this is a little bit of a shorter answer to this one, because we need to expand our definition of practical. And when we do that, it means recognizing that MVPs aren't just about validating ideas. They're about testing disruptive approaches in ways that ideally de-risk bold innovation, things that we're trying. Because too often companies focus on MVPs as a way to test feasibility, but the real power is in using them to challenge assumptions and to push competitive boundaries. So instead of asking, does this technology work? The better question is, could this approach change how we compete? The best MVPs aren't just small steps towards existing goals. They're controlled experiments and rethinking what's possible. Take Tesla as an example. They didn't just test an electric vehicle. They tested an entirely new way of selling, servicing, and updating cars through software-driven innovation. So my advice, use MVPs to explore what the industry isn't doing, and not just kind of what's next on your roadmap. The companies that redefine practical to include iterating towards disruption will be the ones that set the pace instead of follow it.
Great. Hey, Jeff, last but not least, Greg Sterigow asks, what makes individual contributors or organizations blind to the huge opportunities available at the practical levels of digital transformation?
Oh, interesting question. And this one will be a little bit probably longer of an answer. So the biggest reason I would say that individuals and organizations remain blind to the huge opportunities at even the practical level of digital transformation is that I think they confuse complexity with progress. So many assume that for transformation to be meaningful, it has to be groundbreaking, it has to be futuristic, and it has to be revolutionary. When in reality, some of the most impactful digital shifts often come from this practical, high impact improvements that are like hiding in plain sight. So how does this happen, or why does this happen? More importantly, I've come up with a few things I could say is like, well, why does this happen? First, I would call the glamour of disruption. So people love bold, headline grabbing technology, whether it's AI broadly, whether it's generative AI or agentic AI right now, or previously blockchain. Another big one right now is kind of this quantum computing. They steal the spotlight, and they don't need to, because there could be some simple but effective changes, just like better data visibility or connected worker tools or automated workflows, that are overlooked because they're focusing on the glamour of disruption. Just because something isn't flashy doesn't mean it can't be transformational. The second I would say is lack of a clear bridge between vision and execution. So many executives hear about Industry 4.0. I would like to think because I talk about it a lot, but they hear about that. They hear about smart factories and AI-driven manufacturing, but don't know how to connect these concepts to, I'm going to call it tangible steps in their own organization. They think transformation requires this massive all-in strategy rather than potentially incremental steps to deliver immediate value, which may or may not be ROI, while paving the way for larger shifts. This could be taking a long-term transformation and dividing it into small projects, small improvements, and small changes along the way. It's bridging that clear vision, hopefully driven by the art of the possible, and how that turns into execution. The third, I would say, is over-reliance on legacy thinking. So companies often default to this is how we've always done it. They talk about if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And teams focus on maintaining operations rather than challenging them, leading them to miss clear opportunities for improvement. They're so used to working around inefficiencies that they see instead of viewing them as opportunities to do something different. The fourth, I would say, is misalignment between the strategy and the execution. This is different than the vision and the execution. Leaders set bold transformational goals, but individual contributors who are closest to the day-to-day operations may not have the context or the authority or even the confidence to figure out how to challenge some of these existing workflows and to know what decisions need to be made at what level. And this disconnect between the higher level strategy that gets rolled out and the frontline execution could mean that practical transformation opportunities kind of get lost in translation, or they're missing the forest through the trees. And the last I would say is fear of change, even when it's small. Because even practical changes, they require behavioral shifts, whether it's digitizing a manual process or adopting AI-driven insights and knowing what to do with them. There's always a learning curve, even if it's a small one. And people resist change when they don't understand the value that it brings to them. So a couple pieces of advice I would say of how to overcome this blindness. First, I would say is redefine transformation into a series of small practical wins. It's not about deploying AI everywhere, overnight. It's about solving real business problems with the right technology, step by step, that are working together towards a company transformation. Second, I would have to say is create a culture of curiosity, of questioning. Encourage teams to ask, why are we doing it this way? Could technology allow us to do it differently? And empower them to surface these inefficiencies. Third, I would say is make success visible. When practical digital shifts drive measurable impact, showcase those wins. People don't believe in transformation until they see it working. And last is directly to one I said earlier, you need to bridge the gap between strategy and execution. You need to take the leadership vision and you need to make sure that the strategy that explains how to do it does match and is brought down to the execution layer with real operational pain points, so that transformation isn't just viewed as a top-down directive, but it is ingrained into what the employees are doing on a day-to-day basis and how their actions, both on a day-to-day and long-term, are contributing to the transformation that you're trying to achieve.
Jeff, that was great. That last answer was amazing. And this has been a great second part to the art of the possible and the art of the practical. I'm so glad you brought up these topics a few months ago. And it's a great conversation and a great wrap to that dialogue. And with that, this concludes episode 5 of Revolutionizing Manufacturing. Stay tuned soon for episode 6. This is Scott Achelpohl of Smart Industry.
And I'm Jeff Winter.
Thanks for tuning in and have a great day.